needs to be rebuilt by all of us.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ann, Marlon. Thank you for bringing us together here today. In terms of lived experiences, I would begin by talking about the way that I grew up in both Southern California and Austin, Texas. Having attended all integrated schools in my K through 12 public school education, all of the schools that I attended were integrated, but predominantly white. And so I was one of those African-American boys who spent much of his K through 12 education working to negotiate or navigate the terrain between the white kids and the black kids. And it's one of the few kids, I suspect, in my school who really worked very hard the whole time to live in both worlds for a lot of reasons. And I remember that all coming to an end when I became a freshman at the University of Texas, also a predominantly white, but certainly integrated institution of higher education, where I felt like one was forced to make a choice. You're going to be black, or you're going to be something else. An Uncle Tom, an Oreo, as some of my friends once called me. And I decided I was not going to be an Oreo, or Tom sounded nothing like Ray. So I really embraced my blackness in a way that I had not before then, because I decided I'm going to be a race man. I spent my time at the University of Texas and for several years after that working to be a race man, working for the good of African American people. Well, after graduating from the University of Texas, I, along with about 500 other recent college graduates, joined an organization called Teach for America. And we were the initial, or charter corps, as we called ourselves, who met together on the campus of the University of California in Los Angeles for our very first summer training institute. Predominantly white but integrated community of very bright young men and women who were committed to seeing the day when all children, regardless of color, race, creed, religion, had an opportunity to an excellent education. Well, I was placed as a first grade bilingual teacher in a community called Linwood, which is just neighbors Watts and Compton in South Central Los Angeles. I was not bilingual then and have not been since then. They were desperate. Well, there in a predominantly black and Hispanic community, alongside a number of other teachers from the Corps who were predominantly white, we worked together to educate these young kids who many teachers refused to even walk into those classrooms. There I met a woman, about 15 years older than I am, maybe a little bit more than that, named Janice McConnell. Janice is white. She grew up in Long Beach, California. She graduated from Berkeley, I believe, and spent a number of years in the Peace Corps in Peru. She gave her life literally to a small community in Peru, and then she gave the rest of her life to this community of kids at Wilson Elementary School in Linwood, California. Janice is one of the finest human beings that I know, speaks perfect Spanish, visited the home of every student in her classroom all throughout the year. There's not a better teacher in all the world than Janice McConnell. Well, in 1992, when the race riot broke out in Los Angeles as a result of the Rodney King murder, our school was one of the few schools that decided we were still going to have classes that day. Well, it didn't work, and we had to get our students out of school because they could telling us the rioters are coming, and they were indeed coming. So we had to make sure that every student in the school left the building before we left. And we allowed several of the teachers who lived far away, especially the white teachers there, to leave because we were afraid that the rioters, we had heard that the rioters were targeting white men and women in particular. Well, this one woman, Janice McConnell, refused to leave. And she stayed with me and my then girlfriend, now wife, until every child was gone. So it was our job after that to create kind of a car caravan, because we all lived in Long Beach, to get home. Well, I'll never will forget a group of very, very angry African-American men who were beating on the cars of many of the white people who were leaving out of Linwood. And one of the most tragic moments of my life was the time I saw 4 or 5 African-American young men beating on the car of Janice McConnell. I was behind her, and I literally got out of my car, wasn't thinking at the time, said, "No, not her, not you, really got the wrong person. This woman has given so much." And my then girlfriend, now wife, said, "Get back in the car, get back in the car." And I did, and Janice made it safely home. That day was an important day for me. It really reminded me of the fact that really reconciliation has to be about relationships. I was harmed so strongly by the treatment of my friend Janice, who was white, because I knew her so well. And I realized, wow, is it just because I know a person? Do I have to know her that well to be able to see potential in her? And I realized that day, I've got to do something different. I want to learn a lesson from this experience. And so the rest of my time as a Teach for America Corps member and later as a staff member, I really, really focused on getting back to the Ray who learned how to negotiate multiple terrains, predominantly white communities, Jewish communities, gay lesbian communities, Native peoples, and so forth. And so when I came to Tulsa about 5 years ago, one of my commitments was to work with people like Mark and people with TMM and so forth to work on this issue of reconciliation. And one of the great things that came out of my commitment was a friendship with Mark Fitzman and his congregation. He gave me a call, drove up to North Tulsa, bought lunch, really good lunch from one of my favorite places. He said, "Ray, I have an idea." And from there, we began to talk about a partnership between our congregations. We decided we weren't going to try to make something huge. We weren't going to try to change all of Tulsa in one day. But we decided that 6 people from his congregation and 6 people from my congregation would come together, put our heads together, and work on a project. And as he said, it was not so much about the outcome of the project that we chose to pursue. It was more about the process and the learning that took place in that time. We decided that there was a need. I think that's what we have to think about first in terms of reconciliation and working together. First, identifying a specific need. We knew that there were homeless men and women who were transitioning into shelter, and they were going to need their apartments set up. And we decided our work would be to help them set up those apartments, paint the apartments, find furniture, some gently used furniture, make sure they had towels and soap and all the things that one would need to start in a new place. And that was our project. We also, I believe, relied upon our common interest in meaningful community work. Right? We both come from congregations that have a commitment, a long history of a commitment to meaningful community work. And in this, we ended up reaching across traditional lines or traditional barriers that divide so many people in this town, lines of race, lines of religion, in some cases geographic location, north and south. And what I saw in this endeavor was a commitment to what I often talk about in terms of a notion of a common humanity. I believe what brought Mark and I together, and the dozen or so people who did the work together, is that we both share faith traditions that have a belief in this notion of a common humanity. In many Judeo-Christian traditions, when we talk about the notion of a common humanity, we refer to the teaching of the Imago Dei, or the image of God that is intrinsically placed in every human being. And I often like to refer to Martin King when I talk about this notion of a common humanity, because I think in King's theological anthropology, we can find, I certainly identify a project or an idea that illumines the path toward reconciliation.